I just want to return to a video that Professor Anton put on a few days ago about the absolute value of pi. And I posted some kind of response to it, just making gestures towards this term value, because I'd been using it within the context of morality and moral discussions and moral value, as opposed to numerical value as it appears within a discussion of what constitutes pi, the mathematical term pi. I mean, I still haven't got very far with it, but I'm just trying to identify the difference, because pi, as it's expressed in geometrical terms, you know, the picture of a circle with a radius line drawn on it expresses pi. Pi is the relationship between the radius of a circle and its circumference, and it's perfectly expressed in that. But when you try to express it in numerical terms, that's when the problems start, because it becomes an infinite number, beginning with 3.142, and then it goes on infinitely, a non-repeating decimal. I'm just trying to think what that means. It's partly because I think numbers have this almost metaphysical quality of solidity about them. We love numbers. You know, if you can express something in numerical form, it feels very objective. You know, it has that kind of kind of Pythagorean brotherhood, mystical stuff. You know what I mean? The language of the universe, the book of the universe is written in mathematics. It has that kind of a solidity to it when you talk about things in numbers. But when you try and do that with pi and other numbers of that kind, it doesn't work. The constant qualifications keep happening. So it's not exactly 3. It's a bit like 3. But then there's this qualification. Well, it's not quite 3. It's 3.1. But then you have to say again, but it's not quite 3.1, because look, you see there's this a bit of a nuance at the end of it, 3.14. But of course it's not quite 3.14 either, because you have to take other things into account, and it becomes 3.142. So you have to keep kind of making special conditions and special pleadings and emphasizing different unusual circumstances almost, or making, as I say, making conditions so that the 3.142 and it goes on recurring, or not recurring, just an endless non-recurring decimal point, which, as I say, is perfectly expressed with no exceptions, no conditions, no ifs, ands, buts or maybes, as they say, in the diagrammatical form. And I'm just wondering there if there's a way of looking at, again, at the as a metaphor for moral value, I suppose. Because if we're looking at a metaphor for moral value which is based on solid objects, like numbers, then pi is a great example of the slipperiness and the constant conditionality of some kinds of moral choices. I think some are really straightforward, but some clearly aren't. And there's always kinds of conditions. Yes, it's never alright to kill somebody unless they're trying to kill you, or unless your family is threatened, and if they're bigger than you, and lots of little conditions. If they break into your house, and if they're dying and it's a close friend of yours, is it okay to smother them with a pillow? Lots of these little conditions. You know, a bit like the recurring decimals after the recurring digits after decimal point in the numerical version of pi. So it never resolves to a simple whole integer which indicates yes and no. As I say, it's always infinitely conditional. But the same is not true with its relational description. Pi, as captured by the actual diagram, the picture of a circle with a radius line, there are no conditions, because it's embedded in the relationship, and the relationship is what's being displayed, not some kind of numerical equivalent to the relationship. And I think the same thing possibly holds, or could be said to hold, metaphorically speaking, in terms of moral value. When you try to assign moral value, when you try to derive moral value from some equivalent to numerical processes, by giving it that kind of object quality, you end up with these endless series of conditionals. But I think if you try to assign moral value based on primary relationships, is it okay for this person to do that thing to this person within that relationship, then there aren't any conditionals. The moral value is embedded completely and wholly and with no remainders nothing after the decimal point in the diagram of the relationship itself. Well, that's the idea at least.